Clara, a modestly dressed woman in her 70s, approached the entrance to the Grandview, a four-star restaurant that sparkled with luxury. Suddenly, a security guard stepped in front of her. "I'm sorry. Ma'am, we don't allow beggars in here." His eyes swept over her modest attire with disdain. Clara smiled faintly, her composure unwavering. "I'm here for dinner," she said evenly. Reaching into her purse, she pulled out a shiny black card and held it up. "This will take care of any payment concerns." The man's eyes widened for a moment before he stepped aside. Muttering an apology, Clara entered the restaurant without another word. Inside, Sarah, a sharp-tongued and impatient waitress, saw Clara and tried not to laugh. "Looks like someone got lost on the way to the thrift store," she whispered to a colleague, eliciting a round of soft chuckles. Clara, seemingly unaware, approached the host station and asked for a table for one. After a pause, Sarah begrudgingly led her to a small table near the window, her movements tinged with disdain. Seated, Clara perused the menu, unfazed by the skeptical glances from nearby staff. She ordered confidently, truffle risotto, lobster bisque, wagyu steak, and, as an afterthought, caramelized corn fritters. As Sarah walked away, she exchanged a knowing look with another staff member. "She's either showing off or she doesn't know what these cost," she said under her breath. The comment reached Robert, who chuckled and said, "Let's see how she handles the bill." In the kitchen, Daniel, a dedicated chef who often felt undervalued, focused on preparing the fritters. The dish was his creation, a tribute to his hometown of Bellevue, though it was rarely appreciated in the high-end environment of the Grandview. As the dishes arrived, Clara sampled them meticulously. The bisque was too salty. The risotto lacked character. The steak was forgettable. Then she tried the fritters. Her expression shifted, her eyes narrowing slightly as she chewed thoughtfully. She took another bite, letting the flavors linger. She frowned and called out to Sarah, "Excuse me, could you ask the chef who made these to come out?" Sarah hesitated, misinterpreting the request. "Oh boy," she muttered, heading toward the kitchen. "Daniel, someone wants to see you. You're about to get grilled for making those cheap fritters again." Daniel wiped his hands nervously and stepped into the dining room. Clara watched him approach, her expression unreadable. He stood a few steps from the table, his posture tense. "Ma'am, is there a problem with the dish?" Clara shook her head, her tone warm yet deliberate. "No problem at all. Are you from Bellevue?" Daniel blinked, caught off guard. "Yes, ma'am. How did you know?" Clara smiled, her face softening. "These fritters, they taste like home. You've captured something special. It's rare to find a dish that speaks of roots and tradition in a place like this. Well done." Relief and pride flickered across Daniel's face. "Thank you," he said quietly, the praise settling over him like a bomb. He excused himself back to the kitchen. But the encounter left him contemplative. Clara finished her meal and requested to speak with Robert. The staff exchanged wary glances, speculating on her motives. Robert approached her table with his characteristic confidence. "Good evening, ma'am. I trust you enjoyed your meal." Clara's eyes met his. "Not exactly," she replied. She acknowledged the exceptional quality of Daniel's donuts, emphasizing their craftsmanship and flavor, but made it clear that the other dishes fell far short of the restaurant's high standards. Robert stiffened at her criticism but remained polite, pressing her to elaborate. Clara, with measured authority, revealed her identity as a food critic, sliding a business card across the table. The mention of her profession caused Robert's confident exterior to sag, a hint of nervousness betraying his earlier arrogance. She went on to outline the obvious flaws in the meal. "It was obvious that your pans weren't cleaned after each use. There was a bitter taste that shouldn't have been there. It's absurd for a restaurant to charge these prices." Her accurate and unflinching critique stripped away the Grandview's glitz, exposing the inconsistencies and carelessness that belied its four-star reputation. "I want to check your kitchen." Robert, clearly uneasy, attempted to deflect, citing chaos during peak hours and offering hollow reassurances about their commitment to quality. But Clara's unwavering resolve made it clear that no amount of smooth talk would deter her. The staff, caught in a collective silence, exchanged nervous glances. Among them, Daniel stood apart. He wrestled briefly with his conscience before acting. Ignoring the tension around him, he stepped forward and gestured for Clara to follow, leading her into the kitchen through a discreet side entrance. The move was so sudden that Robert and the others could only stand frozen. their protests dying in their throats. Inside the kitchen, the stark reality of the Grandview's operations came to light. The air was suffocating, a heavy blend of heat and the stench of grease. Cramped conditions made every step precarious, with cluttered counters, rusted equipment, and unwashed dishes forming a tableau of neglect. Grime clung to surfaces, and faint stains on the walls spoke of years of inadequate maintenance. Clara's experienced eye absorbed it all with growing disappointment. She methodically inspected the area, lifting cutting boards, running her fingers along countertops, and even crouching to examine the state of the appliances. Her movements were deliberate, leaving no corner unexplored. Every detail reinforced her conclusion: this was no place fit to prepare food, let alone at the premium prices the Grandview charged. Robert barged into the kitchen, his face red and his composure slipping. He accusing her of disrupting their operations. His words came fast and defensive, pointing to high costs, staffing shortages, and the difficulty of maintaining standards in such a competitive market. Clara turned to face him, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "This isn't disruption, Mr. Robert. This is accountability," she stated firmly. "Your kitchen is a disgrace. It's unsafe for your employees and unacceptable for your customers. No excuses can justify this." Robert, caught off guard, stammered, "We've had challenges. Repairs are expensive. And we've done the best we can with the resources available." Clara's tone hardened. "The best you can? This isn't making do, it's negligence. You're compromising health and safety because it's convenient for your bottom line. That's not just irresponsible, it's unethical." Her judgment landed heavily, silencing the room. Clara finally issued her verdict. She would report the establishment to the health department, recommending a full inspection. The restaurant would likely need to suspend operations immediately. Robert's face turned crimson with fury. He glared at Daniel, who stood quietly by the doorway. "You!" he pointing a trembling finger. "You let her in here. You went behind my back and made me look like a fool in front of my staff." Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but Robert didn't let him speak. "Get out. You're fired," Robert spat. "Pack your things and leave." Clara stepped forward, her voice softer now. "Daniel, you'll find better opportunities. Trust me." Daniel nodded, saying nothing more. He turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving behind the oppressive heat and chaotic clutter. Clara turned and walked out, her steps measured, leaving Robert to fume in silence. Daniel left the Grandview feeling disoriented but oddly free. For the first time in years, he wasn't tethered to the oppressive chaos of its kitchen or the sharp-edged demands of Robert Carter. But he couldn't believe that Clara had invited him to work at her restaurant. Her voice was steady and warm but direct. She invited him to Grant's Table, her renowned restaurant, for a conversation about his future. When he arrived, Grant's Table was a world apart from the Grandview. The atmosphere was calm yet purposeful, the staff moved with practiced ease, and the air held a quiet reverence for good food. Clara greeted Daniel with a knowing smile, her sharp eyes appraising him. She wasted no time. "Daniel," she began, "I've seen how you work. Your dedication to your craft stands out, even in a place as chaotic as the Grandview. You deserve better, a real chance to thrive. I'm offering you a position as a chef here at Grant's Table. What do you say?" Daniel was taken aback. He had braced himself for a polite thank you or maybe some career advice, but not this. Her words carried weight, and he could feel the sincerity behind them. After a brief pause to gather his thoughts, he nodded. "I'd be honored, Clara. Thank you for this opportunity. I won't let you down." Clara's smile deepened, signaling her confidence in him. "Good. Let's get you started. There's a lot to learn, but I think you'll fit right in here." Daniel's days of uncertainty had ended as quickly as they began. This was not just a new job but a new beginning. The Grandview, however, was not so lucky. After Clara filed her report, the health inspectors descended on the restaurant. It didn't take long for them to uncover what Clara had seen: grime-encrusted equipment, unsafe working conditions, and food storage that skirted every regulation. The ruling was swift. The Grandview's doors were shuttered indefinitely, and Robert Carter's ambitions crumbled under the weight of his neglect. Among those left stranded was Sarah Mitchell. She had always prided herself on navigating the Grandview's treacherous waters with charm and wit, but none of that mattered now. With no job and a sullied reputation, she found herself at a loss. Desperation led her to the door of Grant's Table. Standing outside, Sarah hesitated. She thought of the cruel jokes she had made about Clara, the judgmental glances, the smug laughter. Shame churned in her stomach, but so did determination. She couldn't undo the past, but she could try to make amends. Inside, Clara was in her office reviewing schedules when Sarah appeared in the doorway, wringing her hands. "Mrs. Grant," she started, her voice wavering. "I know I don't deserve your kindness, not after how I treated you, but I need a second chance. I'll take any job. Please." Clara studied her for a moment. Her expression was unreadable, but her silence was heavy. Finally she spoke. "Sarah, everyone makes mistakes. It's what we do afterward that defines us. You'll start as a cleaner. You'll work hard. And you'll learn the right way to run a restaurant from the ground up. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes, ma'am," Sarah replied, her voice steady now. "I am." Sarah's journey at Grant's table began humbly. She scrubbed floors, polished silverware, and cleaned every corner of the kitchen under the watchful eyes of Clara and her staff. It was grueling, humbling work, but Sarah pushed through. Slowly, her presence became less a reminder of her past mistakes and more an example of growth. Daniel, meanwhile, had taken to his new role like a fish to water. Under Clara's guidance, he refined his skills and embraced the challenge of leading a team. The stark contrast between Grant's table and the Grandview revealed what he had been missing: respect, clarity, and a shared pursuit of excellence. Working side by side, Daniel and Sarah found themselves navigating uncharted waters together. Their relationship was not immediately warm, but it was functional. Daniel offered advice when Sarah faltered, and she absorbed every lesson with quiet determination. Over time, mutual respect took root. Daniel often stayed late, meticulously planning menus and perfecting recipes. Sarah, after a full shift of cleaning, would linger to watch him work, sometimes asking questions about techniques or flavors. Her curiosity became a bridge between them, and Daniel began to see her as more than just a former rival. Sarah's journey in Clara's restaurant, Grant's Table, started rocky but soon took a promising turn. Initially clumsy and hesitant, she gradually found her footing. What began as basic tasks of cleaning and organizing soon became opportunities to learn the inner workings of the restaurant. She embraced each assignment, however small, with an energy that surprised even herself. The once dismissive Sarah now moved with precision, her demeanor professional and approachable. Customers began to notice her genuine interest in their dining experience, and colleagues found her increasingly dependable. Her transformation did not go unnoticed. Sarah's newfound dedication earned her trust among the staff. Where there had been doubt, there was now confidence. Clara occasionally observed her from the sidelines, watching how Sarah managed small crises with grace. Sarah's ability to adapt and excel sparked a ripple effect throughout the team, proving that even the most unlikely individuals could rise to the occasion when given the chance. Meanwhile, Daniel continued to solidify his reputation as the backbone of the kitchen. His culinary skills, already sharp, seemed to sharpen further with each passing day. Beyond his precision and creativity, Daniel's leadership style endeared him to his colleagues. He was the type to roll up his sleeves and step in wherever needed, whether it was mentoring a junior chef or helping Sarah manage a busy shift. His unassuming yet authoritative presence created a harmonious atmosphere in the kitchen. Daniel's approach wasn't just about cooking. It was about making everyone feel like a part of the success story. When the kitchen got chaotic, he remained calm and composed, rallying the team with a steady hand. Under his guidance, the staff grew more confident, and the quality of the dishes reflected that collective energy. Clara's vision for a kitchen that thrived on mutual respect and shared responsibility was coming to life under Daniel's watch. Clara, with her keen eye for potential, saw what both Sarah and Daniel were becoming. She decided it was time to challenge them further. For Sarah, Clara gave her responsibilities that went beyond her initial role. She began involving Sarah in decisions about customer service and allowed her to oversee sections of the dining room during peak hours. The once self-centered server now handled these tasks with thoughtfulness and maturity. For Daniel, Clara introduced more intricate menu planning sessions and encouraged him to experiment with new recipes that pushed the boundaries of their culinary offerings. She often paired them together in meetings, their combined perspectives helping refine the restaurant's operations. Clara believed strongly in nurturing talent, and seeing both of them step up reassured her that Grant's Table was in capable hands. The atmosphere within Grant's table became a reflection of this growing synergy. Customers often remarked on the seamless flow between the kitchen and the dining area. Regulars returned not just for the food, but for the warmth that emanated from every corner of the establishment. Clara took pride in seeing her team become a cohesive unit where respect and professionalism were the norm. Sarah and Daniel, once so different in approach and attitude, found common ground in their shared goal of excellence. Clara's mentoring had done more than elevate their skills. It had cultivated a sense of belonging and purpose. Their collaboration wasn't just improving the restaurant. It was redefining their understanding of what it meant to truly care about the work they did. With every shift, the bonds between Clara, Daniel, and Sarah grew stronger. Clara often smiled as she watched them tackle challenges together, their determination and camaraderie reflecting her own ideals. The trio had become the heart of Grant's table, transforming it into a place where staff and customers alike felt valued and inspired. 5 years had passed since the Grandview closed its doors. Daniel Cooper, now a celebrated chef, had become a prominent figure in the culinary world. His name graced restaurant reviews, and his innovative dishes were highly sought after. On a business trip to a nearby city, Daniel decided to explore a small cafe that had been generating quiet buzz for its simple but delightful menu. Stepping inside, the familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods filled the air, and there, behind the counter, was Robert Carter. For a moment, Daniel hesitated. Robert looked different, aged, perhaps humbled by the years. Gone was the polished suit and commanding presence. Instead, he wore a simple apron and greeted customers with a warm smile. The tension between their past and this unexpected present lingered briefly before Robert noticed him. His expression flickered with recognition, but instead of discomfort, there was a softening in his demeanor. "Daniel," Robert said, his tone sincere. "It's been a long time." The cafe was modest but welcoming. Wooden tables and mismatched chairs gave it a homey feel. As Robert prepared a latte for a waiting customer, Daniel observed the small chalkboard menu on the wall. It wasn't extravagant, but the offerings were carefully curated. The smell of fresh pastries and brewed coffee hinted at Robert's attention to detail. Daniel approached the counter, and after a brief silence, Robert spoke again. "I suppose you didn't expect to find me here." Robert began to explain his journey. After the downfall of the Grandview, he had struggled to regain his footing. The loss was not just financial. It was personal. It forced him to confront the arrogance and short-sightedness that had defined his leadership. Owning this cafe was his way of starting over, he said. And he was finally doing something he genuinely loved, creating an honest experience for customers without pretense. Daniel listened, sensing that Robert's words weren't rehearsed. They were genuine, shaped by years of reflection and hardship. When the cafe quieted down, Robert invited Daniel to sit. The two men shared a table near the window, overlooking a quiet street. It was an ordinary setting, but the conversation felt significant. Robert spoke openly about the lessons he'd learned, about how failure had stripped away the superficial and left him with a clearer sense of purpose. He admitted his mistakes at the Grandview, particularly in how he treated people, and how his obsession with profit had blinded him to the bigger picture. Daniel nodded, his own memories of those days surfacing. There had been anger then, but time had softened it. He no longer saw Robert as the tyrannical boss who had fired him unjustly, but as a man who, like anyone, could grow and change. "It takes courage to start over," Daniel said. "Not everyone has that." As their conversation deepened, Daniel shared his own journey. He talked about how Clara Grant had given him a lifeline, how her mentorship had reshaped his career and his perspective. He spoke of his time at Grant's table, the high standards, and the sense of purpose he had found there. "She always believed people deserved second chances," Daniel said, looking at Robert meaningfully. "She would have been glad to see this." Robert smiled faintly. "Clara was right about many things. I wish I'd realized it sooner." The moment felt like an unspoken agreement. Neither man explicitly asked for forgiveness, but it was there in the words they didn't say. The weight of their shared past seemed to lift, replaced by mutual respect. Daniel reached for his cup of coffee and took a sip, savoring the simplicity of the moment. "This is good," he said, setting the cup down. "Better than I expected." Robert chuckled, a sound that carried none of the bitterness Daniel remembered from years ago. "It's honest," Robert replied. "I've learned that's what matters most." As Daniel prepared to leave, He glanced at the cafe one last time. The sunlight streaming through the windows, the quiet hum of conversation, the satisfied customers. It all spoke of a place that, while modest, had heart. Robert stood by the door, thanking each patron as they left, his smile genuine. When Daniel reached him, he extended a hand. Robert shook it firmly, his expression sincere. "Thank you for stopping by," Robert said. "And for listening." Daniel nodded. "Good luck, Robert. You've earned this." As he walked away, Daniel couldn't help but reflect on the unexpected turns life had taken. What had once been a story of conflict had become one of growth and redemption. Both men had found their paths, and in their own ways, they had learned that failure was not the end. It was a chance to begin again. When Clara passed away, Daniel found himself standing in the quiet halls of Grant's table, the keys to the legendary restaurant resting in his hand. The weight of her trust was palpable, but so was his determination. Clara had built more than a restaurant. She had established a standard of excellence, a sanctuary where culinary artistry met integrity. Daniel was not just inheriting a business. He was inheriting a legacy, one he was intent on preserving. He quickly immersed himself in every aspect of the restaurant, from ensuring the menu retained Clara's signature touches to refining the already rigorous training programs for the staff. He left no stone unturned. Regular meetings with his team reinforced Clara's values, precision, respect, and commitment to the craft. Slowly, his leadership began to reflect her teachings. Customers noticed the seamless transition, and word spread that Grant's Table had not only maintained its excellence but seemed to be reaching new heights under Daniel's stewardship. Parallel to his work at the restaurant, Daniel began to make a name for himself in the world of food criticism. Inspired by Clara's fearless approach, he took his role seriously, visiting establishments across the country with an eye for both detail and fairness. His reviews were sharp but constructive, never dismissive or cruel. He celebrated innovation while holding chefs and owners accountable to the standards of quality and safety Clara had instilled in him. His words carried weight, and soon, Daniel Cooper became a trusted voice in the culinary world, a name spoken with respect by chefs, critics, and restaurateurs alike. Meanwhile, Sarah, who had once been a server at the Grandview, had transformed entirely. Her time under Clara's mentorship and Daniel's watchful guidance had reshaped her approach to work and life. Gone was the dismissive attitude and the tendency to cut corners. In its place was a woman who understood the value of precision, humility, and teamwork. Recognizing her growth, Daniel offered her the position of manager at Grant's Table. The decision was met with unanimous approval from the staff, who had witnessed Sarah's evolution firsthand. As manager, Sarah excelled. She handled daily operations with efficiency and grace, ensuring that the team worked as a cohesive unit. Her interactions with guests were warm and genuine, and her ability to diffuse tense situations was unmatched. She became the face of the restaurant's hospitality, embodying the professionalism and care Clara had always emphasized. Under her management, the staff flourished, and the restaurant's reputation continued to soar. Grant's Table solidified its place as a beacon of excellence in the industry. Patrons marveled at the quality of the dishes, the precision of the service, and the palpable passion of the team. Food critics praised its consistency, noting how every meal seemed to tell a story. A testament to the legacy left by Clara and the dedication of those who followed in her footsteps. Beyond the accolades, what truly set Grant's Table apart was the ethos that defined it, a commitment to excellence not just in the food but in every detail of the dining experience. Daniel and Sarah, together with their dedicated team, ensured that Grant's Table was more than a restaurant. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when passion, integrity, and hard work were at the forefront. Clara's presence was felt in every corner, not as a shadow of the past, but as a guiding light for the future. When Clara passed away, Daniel found himself standing in the quiet halls of Grant's Table, the keys to the legendary restaurant resting in his hand. The weight of her trust was palpable, but so was his determination. Clara had built more than a restaurant. She had established a standard of excellence, a sanctuary where culinary artistry met integrity. Daniel was not just inheriting a business. He was inheriting a legacy, one he was intent on preserving. He quickly immersed himself in every aspect of the restaurant, from ensuring the menu retained Clara's signature touches to refining the already rigorous training programs for the staff. He left no stone unturned. Regular meetings with his team reinforced Clara's values: precision, respect, and commitment to the craft. Slowly, his leadership began to reflect her teachings. Customers noticed the seamless transition, and word spread that Grant's Table had not only maintained its excellence but seemed to be reaching new heights under Daniel's stewardship. Parallel to his work at the restaurant, Daniel began to make a name for himself in the world of food criticism. Inspired by Clara's fearless approach, he took his role seriously, visiting establishments across the country with an eye for both detail and fairness. His reviews were sharp but constructive, never dismissive or cruel. He celebrated innovation while holding chefs and owners accountable to the standards of quality and safety Clara had instilled in him. His words carried weight, and soon, Daniel Cooper became a trusted voice in the culinary world, a name spoken with respect by chefs, critics, and restaurateurs alike. Meanwhile, Sarah, who had once been a server at the Grandview, had transformed entirely. Her time under Clara's mentorship and Daniel's watchful guidance had reshaped her approach to work and life. Gone was the dismissive attitude and the tendency to cut corners. In its place was a woman who understood the value of precision, humility, and teamwork. Recognizing her growth, Daniel offered her the position of manager at Grant's Table. The decision was met with unanimous approval from the staff, who had witnessed Sarah's evolution firsthand. As manager, Sarah excelled. She handled daily operations with efficiency and grace, ensuring that the team worked as a cohesive unit. Her interactions with guests were warm and genuine, and her ability to diffuse tense situations was unmatched. She became the face of the restaurant's hospitality, embodying the professionalism and care Clara had always emphasized. Under her management, the staff flourished, and the restaurant's reputation continued to soar. Grant's Table solidified its place as a beacon of excellence in the industry. Patrons marveled at the quality of the dishes, the precision of the service, and the palpable passion of the team. Food critics praised its consistency, noting how every meal seemed to tell a story. A testament to the legacy left by Clara and the dedication of those who followed in her footsteps. Beyond the accolades, what truly set Grant's Table apart was the ethos that defined it, a commitment to excellence not just in the food but in every detail of the dining experience. Daniel and Sarah, together with their dedicated team, ensured that Grant's Table was more than a restaurant. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when passion, integrity, and hard work were at the forefront. Clara's presence was felt in every corner, not as a shadow of the past, but as a guiding light for the future. Daniel stepped into Robert's cafe on a crisp autumn morning, the smell of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries greeting him warmly. The place was modest but inviting, a far cry from the extravagant setup of the Grandview. As Daniel glanced around, he noticed the small but steady stream of customers chatting quietly, their satisfaction evident in the way they lingered over their meals. The transformation was striking. Robert, once driven by greed and arrogance, now seemed to have found peace in this simpler endeavor. Robert approached from behind the counter, his apron slightly dusted with flour. His face lit up with a smile, though there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. "Daniel," he said, his tone soft but sincere. "It's been a while. I wasn't expecting to see you here." Daniel nodded and returned the smile. "I heard good things about this place. Thought I'd see it for myself." He took a seat by the window, and Robert offered to bring him a selection of the cafe's best dishes. Minutes later, Daniel found himself sampling a slice of homemade pie, a bowl of hearty soup, and a perfectly brewed cup of coffee. Each bite was a testament to Robert's commitment to quality. "This is excellent, Robert," Daniel said after a while, setting his fork down. "You've really outdone yourself." Robert sat across from him, his hands clasped together on the table. There was a pause before he spoke. "Thank you, Daniel. That means more than you know." He took a deep breath, his expression growing serious. "I want to say something I should have said a long time ago. I'm sorry for everything. I was so blinded by ambition back then. I didn't see what I was doing to you, to the staff, to the customers. Losing the Grandview was a wake-up call I desperately needed." Daniel met his gaze, his tone steady. "We all make mistakes, Robert. What matters is what we do afterward. It's clear you've learned from yours. This cafe. It's honest, humble. It reflects the better side of you." Robert nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "You forgiving me, it's something I never expected. But it's given me hope. Running this cafe has taught me to focus on what really matters, serving people, not exploiting them. Their conversation shifted to lighter topics, the tension that had once defined their relationship dissolving. They talked about the cafe's beginnings, the challenges Robert faced, and the satisfaction he found in his work now. Daniel shared updates about his life, his career as a chef and critic, and the legacy of Clara, who had inspired them both in different ways. As their time together drew to a close, Robert extended his hand. "Thank you, Daniel, for your kindness, for your honesty. It's rare, and I won't forget it." Daniel shook his hand firmly. "Take care of this place, Robert. It's special. You've built something worth being proud of." Walking out of the cafe, Daniel felt a deep sense of closure. He looked back one last time, seeing Robert bustling behind the counter, a man who had finally found his footing after years of missteps. The past no longer weighed them down, it had become a foundation for growth. Reflecting on their journey, Daniel realized the power of second chances. People could change, not by denying their mistakes but by confronting them head-on. Clara had taught him that redemption was possible for anyone willing to learn and grow. That lesson now extended to Robert and himself. Life was about progress, not perfection, and forgiveness was the bridge that connected the two.